Austin is fast rivaling Silicon Valley when it comes to being the startup capital of the world. And at the heart, it's Capital Factory. And Larry here had the unique pleasure of sitting down with Josh and getting a tour of Capital Factory and getting very nice conversation about what drives Josh into building something like this, right? Can you tell us a little bit about Josh?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the definition of a maverick mind, just look at Josh Baer.
Yeah.
I mean, he is an extraordinary person. Firstly, what's amazing about him is that he's actually quite a shy person.
Yeah.
You know, remarkable for a person who's built this Disneyland for entrepreneurs. I mean, you come in here, the spaces are amazing. People are working out of here, hundreds of startups working out of these spaces, including, by the way, representatives of the armed forces, joint armed forces, and various branches of the forces.
Companies that just landed on the moon last week.
Yeah, and so many space companies have started out of here. And the facilities here and the social events here and the opportunities for cross-pollination. For example, right here is the University of Austin at Texas.
Yep.
You know, they use their technology division is here.
Yeah.
The armed forces, every one of the armed forces are here.
Yeah.
And so many startups, I mean, literally hundreds.
Yeah.
These social spaces, there's these working spaces, there's podcast studio where we're sitting right now.
We're right now in the podcast studio.
It's so exciting. They even own the gift shop
Yes.
on the ground floor of the 16-story building in downtown Austin, which is like this playground for entrepreneurs or for startups. I kind of met Josh through business. Actually, this was my first time meeting Josh, but I worked with folks from the Capital Factory because I'd made a small investment in one of their ventures that started here, and just was fascinated by the people, extraordinary people, young people, much younger than Josh, who are running the place, so serious venture fund leaders. I started to use the Capital Factory offices as my office in Austin.
Yeah.
And got a sense of the place. And this was my first meeting with Josh. And I was just bowled over.
Yeah.
He's just an amazing person. Really nice person to meet, but what a fascinating story.
And it's truly one of the more unique conversations that I've personally heard. Just having met Josh in person and then hearing his story and what he's built really unique. Now we're going to head over to the tour between Larry and Josh. You'll see that here in a few seconds. And then after that, Larry and Josh will sit down for a conversation about what drives Josh to build something like Capital Factory, which I've worked out for the last week and I'm already in love with it. So,
and let me just say that above all, Josh is such a brilliant example of what we call the Maverick Mind.
100%.
I'm just so excited he'd agreed to be on the Maverick Mind and look forward to everybody enjoying this conversation.
Without further ado, here's the tour.
Where do you come from, though?
I grew up just outside of Boston.
Okay.
And went to school in Pittsburgh and then came down here right out of school. And the whole time, one of the things that I've seen about Austin that I think is a little bit special and unique is basically, and I'd say the early stage startup market is similar, but when there's the boom, we ride the boom really hard. And in a lot of ways, like when there's a crash, we're kind of the last ones to feel it and the first to recover. And a lot of the dips everywhere else are just kind of like a flat here. And so, the real estate market here is barely, I don't know if it's dipped the whole time I've been here. It went up a lot during COVID. So I'm not saying this is like the best time ever, but
it's a great time.
But there's still big companies moving here.
It's a great time to buy.
Yeah.
It's a great time to buy.
It probably is, yeah.
I have really bad memories of Texas. In the early 80s, I lost a huge pile of money in Houston. I mean, a huge pile.
And in oil and gas?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a terrible lesson. No, it was an excellent lesson to be learned at a very young age. It is.
And where are you from?
South Africa.
South Africa?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I have not been there yet, but I have some friends from there. And it's definitely, we're planning an Africa trip for my family maybe next year. So it's on our list. But.
Yeah, so when I came to the meetings last time, we saw a lot of South Africans in the mix of that. So there are quite a few here in Texas, and a lot in Dallas, a lot. Not that as many, I think, in Austin. But Austin is very different to anywhere else in Texas. It's like
for sure.
A whole different world.
I think of it like the Goldilocks city.
Yes.
It's not too big. It's not too small. Yes. It's just right.
But it's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. I mean, I see the
for
change.
Sure.
Yeah, we see the change.
And so have you been to Capital Factory before?
So I have. And I've just had a tour of Capital Factory, but I am so enamored of yours. We had a pre-tour so that, we would know where we were going and what we were going to do.
Okay, cool. So, great. Well, okay, so you've been here, you've looked around some. It's kind of freezing out here. So let's go step right inside where it's a little bit warmer. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more. And we're going to walk around, and as we walk, then we'll meet some people along the way.
Hi.
Oh, wow, it's so much better in here. How would you describe Capital Factory? So I know where to start.
That's one of my problems, is trying to describe Capital Factory. But it's like a playground for startups. And I shouldn't be flipped to say playground. It's like a...
Oh, I love it. I call it Disney World for startups.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
we're on the same page.
I mean, it's extraordinary. When people describe it to me, I say, what are you talking about? But when you hear and you feel the vibe and you meet some of the folks from here, you realize this is a whole new level. This is a very different level. And, I've been in the Silicon Valley and, met a lot of people and been to a lot of events. This is a whole different world. This is like you called it a Capital Factory, but it's really like an entrepreneur's factory. It's really a factory where entrepreneurs can speak freely amongst one another and know what they're talking about. And so, it's extraordinary. And, the imagination that led to it is quite amazing.
Wow, you're hired. We're done. Let's go. That was great.
I'm ready.
So great. You get it, obviously. And when I talk to people about it, I think of it like it's a country club for entrepreneurs. It's the Disney World for startups, right? Yeah. It's a place and it's a community, right? It's about people. And so when it started, it was 2009. The world was a lot different, right? The angel list was just getting started. You couldn't even go find a list of all the investors on the internet to go reach out to. It was really the old boys club. Right.
Yeah.
And as I was getting started in Austin, I'd sold one of my companies a few years before, and I was angel investing, and I quickly became the most active angel investor in Austin, which was not very hard. I only had to do 5 deals, and I was the most active angel investor in Austin. And quickly I kind of found the other 20 other people that were founders, that were doing deals, that were interested. It was all software, right? And they were all kind of peers. They were friends of mine. And as we started doing deals together and investing, one, we were having fun. That is where it started.
Yes.
And then two, we saw other great things happening. We saw Y Combinator get launched. We saw Techstars get launched. I had come here to work at Trilogy Software with Joe Lemont, and Trilogy had Trilogy University in 1999, actually 1995. Yeah. And that was like Y Combinator meets Survivor.
Yeah,
it was so cool. Way before then, it was like an accelerator and incubator, and every 3 weeks they killed half the companies. So it was just kind of brutal, cutthroat at the same time, and everybody was just charging and building and trying to get customers. And it brought so many talented entrepreneurial people here. I really think Joe deserves a ton of credit, and many people have given it to him for really bringing the talent here that stayed and that fueled it. We saw, and so I had that inspiration from Trilogy. I'd been part of that community, and I'd seen Joe build something like that. And then I saw the example from Y Combinator and others. And the first thing I did is we tried to get Y Combinator to come here. And they were at the time they were in Boston and San Francisco. They're we're not coming to Austin, especially then, right?
Yeah.
Then we called up Techstars. We were hey, come to Austin. And at the time they were nope, we're not coming to Austin. They were just in Boulder. But Brad Feld did come down and was super nice, open book, kind of just talked about how things worked and what they were doing. And so when we just kind of figured it out on our own and did it our way.
What made Austin. Or was it Austin City Limits? Or events must have conspired. Something must have happened to turn Austin into Austin.
Yeah, well, that's a good one for the podcast. We'll get into that more, but I'll give you the quick answer. And I'll say my quick answer to that is, first of all, Austin's number one strength is quality of life.
Yes.
It's the reason why all the people want to move here, and that's why businesses want to be here. It's why it's why we get so much talent here. It's why everything else fuels, is that for a long time, it's had a very high quality of life, and really smart, educated, entrepreneurial people have wanted to move here.
As opposed to quality of weather.
As well, normally, this is an exception. The exception proves the rule.
Every time I've been to Austin, I'm told it's an exception. Either it's so incredibly hot, I can't.
Well, no, hot is not an exception, but cold is an exception.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But we're ready for the cold.
Yeah, I'm
ready for the hot.
Yeah.
But something I haven't verified this stat, but something I was told is that since every 20 years, since the 1800s, Austin has doubled in size.
Good grief.
So it's not even one thing. You know what I mean? It can't be one thing. It's been going for a long time. But we have the university. We are in the center of Texas, and Texas is, the amazing world, land of opportunity. It is, I mentioned before, being the Goldilocks city, like the porridge in Goldilocks was not too hot, not too cold. Austin's just it's kind of just right. And I don't know that you could do this in San Francisco or New York City, right? You couldn't have a place that was the center of gravity.
You could have a place within New York City that's kind of cool, but
it can't be the place.
It can't be the place.
And who knows if we can do it forever, but somehow we're the place.
I'll share with you.
And we call it the center of gravity, right? And that's the thing. Like you said, it's a place where the entrepreneurs know, if I come here, my people are here.
Yeah.
And I can meet other people, and I can find, because starting a company is all about people.
It is.
It's all about people. Yeah. I need to meet talent. I need to meet co-founders. I need to meet customers. I need to meet investors. And that's just a merry-go-round. You just go from, one to the other.
But you also need a huge amount of courage and fortitude. And so this place adds to the courage by the encouragement that it gives.
And through examples, through role models.
Through examples. And fortitude is people supporting one another. It's a very difficult process. I mean, I've done it several times, and some of the hardest times of my life. By the way, Austin has a special place in my heart. When I arrived in the United States, I was here at school, but when I came back to settle, I actually stopped in Austin for a chess tournament. And I didn't win it because terrible blunder right at the last move of the last game, but it was the best tournament I ever played in my life.
Oh, wow. That's a great story. Do you still play chess?
I don't. My son was a good chess player. I was never a great chess player. My son was an extraordinary chess player, but he gave it up at the age of 12. He was like number 3 in the country, junior chess player. But he gave it up at the age of 12 because it's a crazy world. It's a little, once you get professional, it's a crazy world. I want to introduce you to somebody. Great. As we get going here. So let's see. We've got Garrett over here hiding. Okay, there we go. So Garrett, your podcast is called what? Maverick Minds? Maverick Minds. All right, Garrett definitely fits into the Maverick Minds profile. This is too nice. Yeah, how's it going, buddy? Good. Yeah. So Garrett, he's gonna. I'm sure he'll do a great job introducing it. But just to introduce, meeting him. First of all, this company is named Pipe Dream. Could you not have a better name for a company? Yeah. Right. And it totally fits what they do, and you'll love it, and it kind of fits I think a bunch of themes you'll like. But when it's one of those things where, talk about Maverick Minds, you meet him, and you first hear about it, and it's so incredible, like hard to believe that a lot of people first think like, oh, maybe it's a pipe dream, like maybe it's a joke, right? And then you talk to him, and honestly, at first I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, but that's not real. Like, you couldn't do that, right? And then I talked to him, and I'm like, no, they're doing this. Holy crap, this is real. Like, and they've got a total, they've got to go to market, and they're making this happen, and there's a real need for it, and it blew my mind. So it's really one of my favorite companies, and I'll let him tell you more about it. Yeah. Well, I mean, the hook is in. What is it? So what is it?
Yeah, so we just put underground infrastructure. So there's these small pipes that we put in underground. They're just like normal utility pipes, just like sewage or water, just plastic pipes. And then we have a high-speed robot that we put on here that runs through it for delivering things through cities. So this guy can go 100 miles an hour outside of the pipe.
I've never seen that one.
Yeah, this is new. Wow. So it's all about how do you get something to...
But that's not in a pipe, right?
No, very tough to film in a pipe due to it being in a pipe. So
and that fits in a pipe?
It does, yeah. So
how
like
big is the pipe?
This big.
Like a standard PVC pipe, like they'd run sewage through.
Yeah.
Wow, and how do you don't tunnel that, you dig that?
So you can dig or tunnel.
Or tunnel.
So when we've put them in the past, you either do what's called a trench, and it's exactly how you put in standard utilities. So you either do a trench where you cut the ground and you lay the pipe in, or we bore. You do a horizontal directional drill.
Using a conventional horizontal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But one of the great things about it, that again, as soon as, you think it's like, how you're going to run these, like you're going to run to tunnels everywhere? He's like, oh no, there already are tunnels everywhere. We already got pipes running all over the city.
Utilities.
We already know how to put these pipes throughout the whole city. So
this is back to the future.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so when we talk to I think people who aren't in the utility space are always like, oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. Then you talk to the city that we're going into first. We talk to the public works department. They're like, yeah, go for it. You put in, there's like a standard process to put in these pipes and run the process, and we're good with it because they're just used to putting in this type of pipe.
Can you say which city it is you're going into?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, just give me a sense of what are the things you're going to be transporting through there.
Yeah, we're really focused on things that you already want to deliver. So
and these are this size.
How big is that?
Yeah, so it's like the payload's about like this. So this is the standard Amazon and Walmart totes, so the totes that they already use that fit all their payloads.
So all the Amazon deliveries and wow.
Yeah, so our thought is if you marry this with drones and other autonomous vehicles, even like people, you can get to a point where you have 15-minute delivery of everything. So that's everything that's at Amazon, all your groceries.
Makes absolute sense.
And then eventually, like what we want is that there's in every office building in a building like this, you go into the building, you just have a drawer in the wall, both for receiving things and sending them back.
Brilliant.
So that bi-directionality we think is going to be a pretty big.
That is brilliant.
And if you're building like a really nice house, like you want your own little stop, right? You're building a really, like
that
a really
exactly
like a
what was going through my mind.
Super high-end building, like they're going to have their own spots, right, in your house, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so like when I first met him, like he's explaining just this first use case, and even Amazon's probably an even bigger one. It makes sense. We haven't talked about that specific one, but the first one he said was just food delivery. And I'm just thinking like, oh my God, like who would have ever designed this? I'm ordering a $10 sandwich and it gets delivered by a 2,000-pound car driven by a person an hour later that's cold.
Exactly.
Like, nothing about this process makes any sense.
It doesn't make any
sense. Right? Like, and that yet it's big. Like there's a lot of that happening all the time, right? Like, and so I was just like, oh my God, if all you did was food delivery. And then, oh my God, Amazon delivery, duh, like even better. But like if all you do is food delivery, that's massive and just so much better.
Wow.
Right?
This is a brilliant idea.
Oh, appreciate it. It takes a lot of people.
What stage are you at?
We've deployed like our pilot project in the city, and then we have 100 pre-orders for our systems for like putting in like individual locations, and then we're launching our citywide this year. So it'll be a 40-mile system in a city. City to be announced hopefully soon. Wow.
So at the Maverick Mind, we asked some questions about how the hell did you get to where you are? Where do you come from? What's your backstory?
How do you become a hyper logistics expert?
Yeah.
I'm a mechanical engineer, and really looking at, what's the biggest opportunity I can spend the next 20 years on? And then committing to, I'm just going to spend the next 20 years, solving this problem. And then finding people like Josh along the way who are crazy enough to believe in help, and everyone pulls together and you make it happen.
And what brought you to Capital Factory? Was it Austin? Were you in Austin? Did you start up in Austin?
Yeah, we were headed to Austin, and someone heard we were headed to Austin. Like, you have got to meet Josh. And he's gonna get you plugged in with all the right people, and so he did. Yeah, we met him and plugged us in with all the right people, and feel like I've been here for 10 years.
So you were headed to Austin from where?
Oklahoma City.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a friend who was on the podcast just a little while ago from Tulsa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oklahoma City is a beautiful place. My wife and I were there last year, amazed at the architecture, stunning architecture.
Yeah,
I mean,
beautiful.
I just didn't expect it. And I guess I hadn't read up very much about it, but yeah, it's a marvelous place. Yeah.
So one last thing, and I hope, it's funny, when you catch up every few months, and so I see this, I'm like, oh my God, the robots look way better, they're way cooler now, so hopefully I'm still telling the right story, but another thing that really blew me away when I thought about this too, was just, thinking about like Uber, right? Uber everyone thought they were going after the taxi market. They didn't go after the taxi market. Like, they made a whole new market, right? Like, I never took taxis before Uber.
That's exactly
right. And I take Ubers all the time now, right? Like, it's just like, they just blew the market wide open by making it accessible to way more people, right?
Yeah.
And so he talked about like this idea of like quick delivery, like, like that opens up a completely new market.
Absolutely.
Like, I could rent a hammer from Home Depot.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense if a car has to deliver it, or if it takes an hour or a couple hours to get there, or it takes me an hour to go get it and get back, right? But if I can
just
press a button on my phone and 15 minutes later a hammer shows up in my house, especially like the special one I need, and then I hammer something and then I put it back and it goes away. I don't want to store the hammer anywhere, right? And that's just it's like a whole new world.
How many times have you said, oh, I've got to get this done. Oh God, I need this special tool. I need this particular thing. I mean, today you can order from Amazon for today's delivery, and they're pretty darn good at it. But this changes everything. I mean, this really does change everything. Well,
and it's really happening. This is real.
I give you the plan of my house, the map of where my house is. I really need one. Yeah. Wow.
We'll fast track it.
Right. What city do you live in?
Cary, North Carolina.
That's the city.
Yeah. Well, good try. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Garrett. Great to see you. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
We'll connect you guys after too.
Great. I mean, I wish you every bit of the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, definitely, I hope that fits your criteria, but I think Maverick.
It absolutely does. There's a Maverick right there.
All right. Cool.
Right. Yeah.
See you around, Garrett. Garrett, thank you.
Oh, we'll do.
I mean, this room is that stage is we're so, again, we couldn't have tried to do this. We're so lucky. It's the stage of Austin. Tim Cook comes to Austin and they're making some announcement about community colleges. And they're like, this is his team. They're like, while we're here, why don't we stop by the local startup place and meet some app developers, right? And they come and they're doing the tour and they walk around and they see the pictures and they're seeing the place and they go to the community college and they see it and they come back here and they're like, what if we bring the whole community college over here and we do the whole announcement here, right? And we end up with Tim Cook for the whole morning, right? And then we get to pick 5 startups that get to meet Tim Cook and do what you just did.
Wow.
Right? And get to show off their app. And just kind of before we got, hopefully you got a briefing about who you're going to meet with. Before those startups got to meet with Tim Cook, a lot of other people had to look at the startups first, right? They're getting a ton of exposure across Apple, across all the press, across all these other people, right? And so really, our secret sauce is this, actually what we're doing right now, that we've got a team whose job is to do these, that this happens every day with super important people that can make a big difference for companies. That could be a big investor, that could be a big customer, that could be a big influencer. And we don't even, we don't even invite them in. They're just showing up all the time. And then Lyndon's job, who you met, is not to give the tour. It's to figure out who they should meet with.
And what the fit is.
What's the connect? Why is it going to make them, and then hopefully we're just making somebody's day every day, right? And somebody got to get in front of Tim Cook. The next month, somebody got to get in front of Satya Nadella.
But you couldn't have designed this. You couldn't have designed this from the outset.
No.
So
there's a vision of the club, right? There's a vision of hey, wouldn't it be great if we're all together? But no way. I couldn't imagine. And same thing with the government defense stuff. They chose us. They came here. We leaned in. We said yes. We were hell yeah.
How did they find you?
How did they find us?
I guess it was organic, really.
Yeah, I could name a whole bunch of people that are involved. And I think, so there's a couple of different factors. One, they were the obvious place to go is Silicon Valley. And a few years before, Silicon Valley gave them the middle finger. was like, we're not going to, Google in particular was like, canceled the contract. We're not going to work with you. They got really offended. They got really felt bad about it. And they were like, we're not going to Silicon Valley. Or they, they still did something there, but they're like, we need to be outside Silicon Valley. They also knew they didn't want to be in DC and really on the East Coast, because that's like the old school Beltway. They knew they wanted to get outside of the politics.
That's brilliant thinking on their part. You have to give it to them.
It was. Yeah. And so now they're looking, so now if you take out DC and San Francisco, there aren't many other options left, okay? Like, this is kind of the obvious place to go. There was here, Boston or Raleigh, and like, no, this was the obvious place to go, and it was the right call. And so then when they came here, the other really smart thing they said was, hey, should we go to Camp Mabry, the military base, a couple miles from here? Or should we go up to like Round Rock, like in the suburbs and like something like that? And they said, no, actually, especially after being here, they're like, we need to be near here. We need to be around all the entrepreneurs. We need to be downtown. Like, there's no other 4-star general.
So what year was
Army base downtown?
What year was
2018.
Wow. That's so far-sighted for them. I wouldn't have thought in 2018.
And that process even started years before that. I mean,
yes, it's amazing. That's very impressive. Kind of like NASA Ames. Do you know NASA Ames?
I know NASA, but I don't know what
NASA Ames is in the Valley. And
I'm more familiar with Johnson, obviously.
Yeah, so NASA Ames is a branch of NASA that is extraordinary, because out of that came so many of the space entrepreneurs, and it was happening pretty much at the same time that SpaceX was beginning and so on. And so NASA Ames was kind of like that kind of place. It was not within NASA in the conventional bureaucratic environment, and it was led by a very, very amazing guy. And so, a real maverick mind. And so, it produced a lot of these space entrepreneurs, some pretty crazy ones, but some pretty good ones.
Yeah, this is the room. It's obviously super multi-purpose. We have a lot of different rooms, but this is like, nobody else makes a room like this, and like lets it open to everybody. And every night there's some meetup group going in here. So the first floor I took was the top floor, and someone had built that out, not exactly the way it is, but really beautifully, and most of what's there. And so I was able to just move in and work with actually Steve Osprey from GigaFund. I don't know if you know Steve, but he had built that out. And then a few years later, the building sold, and the owner of the building had leased himself the 5th floor. So the new owners didn't like that deal. And I was able to they never should have leased me another floor. Like, I didn't qualify at all, because I never would have qualified for the first floor, but I was able to sneak. I was here already, and they wanted to get him out. And so I was able to sneak in and take this other floor.
The serendipitous thing is so important.
And then I'd been down that whole time. This space down here was so sad. It wasn't as deep, and it was like a barber shop and like a Sprint T-Mobile store, and
they were dying,
and they were just like a shoe shine. It was it was just so, and they were just empty half the time. It was so sad and empty, and I just looked at it the whole time and was like, I want that space, and so then the building sold again, and I went to the new owner, and when a building's selling, everybody wants to make a little bit more money, and so the more percentage leased, the better leasing term, the better loan terms they get
before the sale.
Well, I did it right as it was happening, in conjunction with the new owner and the old owner, saying hey, the old people, everyone's getting better financing. Everyone's gonna get a commission on this whole thing, and I got I pay literally almost no rent, almost just OpEx for this space. And so and that's what allows me to give it to the community for free.
Wow.
You know what I mean? My rent here is but
it pays for the building. It must pay for the building.
Oh, I bring in thousands of people, right? Exactly. I'm hotels should be paying me, right? So but magic never should happen. And then the 8th floor was the government floor, another magic trick. Booz Allen, who's not here anymore, but honestly, they really paid to build that out, and I was able to convince them to see that vision. And
well, I'm sure they feel much more comfortable than with Booz Allen, paying the Booz Allen fees, anyway.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Another part of this whole thing was getting the gift shop. The gift shop was also the saddest gift shop in the whole world. And it was just oh my God, just nothing, really bad tchotchke toys and sundries and stuff. And so also when we took this space, I was able to buy out the gift shop and this is our gift shop now.
Wow.
And it's all robots and toys and
It is
t-shirts.
such a fun gift
right?
shop. I did a little tour of it. And
Yeah,
I
and
really
then
marked up.
every one of these books is written by one of our mentors or somebody in our community, right? These are all entrepreneurial books. I don't know if you noticed, right? Like,
amazing books.
there you go, right? Because it's like, like this is our, and normally when you come to the tour, you start here. And it's like, come here.
Yeah,
and like,
I would never allow my son into the store. He would never walk out without he's read many of the books, but he's very, very...
Whenever I have a favorite book, of course, I get to go put it in here. The Four Agreements is one of mine.
I haven't even read that.
Oh, that's like a life, like, it's really quick read, but it really changed my life.
Wow.
I highly recommend it. You probably already live a lot of it, but like, it's kind of like a little bit of a Stoic Zen, like, way to look at life, and I find it really helpful. Stephen Wolfram's a good friend. We got his book down there.
Yeah, Stephen Wolfram is the most credible guy.
So this is obviously the Star Wars floor. This was the second one that we took, as I mentioned. Live in the Star Wars land. When the Army came, they did not want their own floor. They're like, no, we want to be on the Star Wars floor. Like, that was like the whole thing. One of my favorite things about this space is when you look at the men's and women's, it's Luke's and Leia's. And the Braille actually says Luke's.
That's amazing.
Not that I can read Braille, but I'm told it says Luke's.
Now, did you get to fit out the floor?
Yeah, again, it was kind of like one of those things, like the top floor we took, and we could barely change anything. We had no budget, right? And then this floor, like, I knew nothing about real estate. This is like, so I take this floor. I didn't realize you're not supposed to pay to build out the floor yourself. Like, you get like the TI money and stuff. I spent like $2 million like redoing this floor. Terrible, like lots of mistakes I made along the way. There's also, actually, if you notice, see the gear?
Yeah.
Like there's a gear. There's no hallways.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to hide.
Got it.
So we don't have there's no big long hallway. It's like an open space with offices and things all around, and everything has windows. You can see who's here and what's going on.
Absolutely noticed that, yeah.
And it's, part of it is like, one, people are here, they want to be seen. Like, they want you to notice they're here. They're looking for introductions, for connections.
Right.
And for me, it's like, it's kind of like the best due diligence in the world. Like, I kind of know who's here, who's working hard. Like, Kurt never leaves this place. Like, that's I can tell you, like, he's working his ass off. I know, because he's always here working. Last Tuesday, I teach a class at UT, but I bring them here. And about 5:45, there was like the head of AI, head of startups, which is all focused on AI at Microsoft, was here. And I text Kurt. I'm like, Kurt, are you here? He's like, oh, I'm in my car. I just left. I'm like, come back here. He turns around and drives back, and that's the kind of, serendipity of what happens from all these things happening.
So one question though, where do people park?
Right. No, we have park. So there's parking in the building. Oh. There's parking. We have a garage next door actually as well too.
Got it.
And then there's obviously street parking and things like that.
That must be a pretty significant overhead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Pre-COVID, parking was the number one problem with downtown. It was actually the reason companies left downtown.
Gotcha.
Is they just got to the point where we just can't get enough parking for our employees.
COVID solved that.
But it really hasn't been an issue since COVID. I mean, I'm sure it probably will be eventually again, but right now there's generally there's enough parking. Yeah. Yeah,
the return to office has become a clear theme now. It's going to happen now.
Yeah, and that's really good for us too.
Yes.
As much as this place, people. The nice thing is, the reason you come here is because you don't want to be by yourself. Yeah. You want to be around other people, you want to meet people. So that's always going to work for us, and it's a place you come to meet. But even with the government partners and others, a lot more people have been working from home, and that's going to push everybody to be here. And being together is good, and it makes stuff happen.
It's very important. People have underestimated the importance of it, but I think they're beginning to discover it now.
Yeah.
Elon has made this a very important perspective for a lot of people. He often creates the movement, and so the back to office thing is going to happen now.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I also I've had a theory coming into it, and I think it's certainly still true, that, coming into COVID, we all had built up so much social capital.
Yeah.
Right? Like we all knew everybody. We knew people we'd been working with. We had these relationships. And so we could just go online, and like there was a trust level already. There was a bunch of other things.
Exactly right.
And I even know some other friends of mine were like, I'm so envious. They were able to start a company during COVID with a whole bunch of people they already knew, and they just like, boom, hit the ground running. They're all online. They're living the life. But like, it doesn't scale, and it doesn't sustain, right?
It doesn't scale.
Because you can't just bring in new people and have all that trust in those relationships.
But there's also the customer to think of.
Yeah.
You know, my company, I was in it was before I finally sold my last bit of the company, but in my last company, I lived through that COVID period. And what happened is that those close and tight customer relationships that we had with some of the largest corporations in the country, we couldn't evolve those.
Deals
in our
happen
new
with relationships.
Deals
you
happen.
You got to go have lunch with people.
That's it.
Totally.
And relationships don't happen over Zoom or whatever.
I mean, in rare special cases, you can find exceptions, but in general, no, they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I formed good relationships on Zoom, particularly with my international colleagues. But it's a whole different world when you're trying to influence, a whole level or multiple levels of a large corporation.
And trust. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right, let's go catch up with Kurt.
Kurt, good to see
you. Welcome to cold Austin.
I know, the coldest it gets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what is this business?
What is this business? So you can think of us as third generation AI, and we have really come through with some computational breakthroughs that allow us to solve a lot of the issues that are surrounding LLMs today, like hallucinations, around reliability, around explainability and biases, and then also do it at a very, very low compute.
Wow. So
how do we make that? How do you like at some level, like how do we know how yours is better than all the others that claim they're like
great question
taking a different approach? Or
So ultimately, it's we like to say we're from the Show Me State, from Missouri, and so we took one of the top benchmarks very early on demo, and we bested all the hyperscalers, including OpenAI, on the preeminent benchmark test called MMLU Pro. So we know that we outperform them in terms of accuracy and hallucinations. And so we're also developing some internal benchmarks to do that as well.
But what is the distinguishing feature? How have you been able to outthink, the likes of OpenAI and
who have massive teams and billions in compute
and massive teams of really the top engineers in the world? So what is the secret?
So to come up with these kind of Einsteinian level breakthroughs that we've had, because they're literally at that level, you need someone who thinks first principles and from a different angle. And that's my co-founder. It's literally the guy in the garage who's been thinking this for 15 years and just looked at things and looks at the world much differently and was able to make these big unlocks. And I think one of the big things that I've talked to several people about, it's not just one computational breakthrough, it's about 5 of them and then stitching them all together, which is a massive deal. Versus if you think of today's LLMs, it's really just transformer technology. There's really no secret about it. Right? Everyone knows everything. This is so vastly different. It's very similar to, I like to say, at the turn of the century, when they were trying to build the mother of all bombs, they kept adding more TNT and like, let's go do that. And then meanwhile, you have this guy, third grade patent clerk over here saying, no, you take a little bit of mass to build the mother of all bombs. It's that convergent.
So
this is quantum to kinetic.
Like literally, we do have quantum in our future.
No, I mean, it's
a quantum leap. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he would be a true maverick mind.
He is truly a maverick mind. That is someone you need to be talking to.
Okay. Well,
so one more question. So what about DeepSeek? How does that fit into all of this?
So that was one of the best things that's ever happened to us, because all of a sudden it created this, everyone was really pro LLMs and thinking you had to have, all the capital and all the firepower and, arms.
Bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. And all of a sudden it's like they popped the balloon, and all of a sudden we've gotten a lot of attention now because people are like, oh, maybe there is a better way. Maybe you don't need all that money. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden now we're having a lot of inbound interest in us.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's been
fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely, Larry. I love your podcast. So I'm glad to connect.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Also, good to see you again.
All right. Take care. Larry.
Thanks,
Thank you so much. I
Take
appreciate
care.
you. Bye now.
Yeah, so this is their this is our 8th floor. It's our Center for Dual Use Innovation and Defense Innovation. And let's see, do we have an event in progress here, or is that just one coming up? Got it. Are we meeting with them?
No.
Okay, no. Are they doing an event, or are they just sitting there?
So they're all hands.
Oh, they're all hands. Okay, great. Okay, so bunch of stuff going on here, which is great. So this room in the middle here, if you just want to step over, it's very similar to the down floor we were just on. So big open space. We can host events in here. There's a stage. There's conference rooms with all around the side. They're all glass walls, and you can see. And then we've got our podcast room and other kind of resources here too. And one of the things that's super special about this that I don't think exists anywhere else is that we have multiple different defense innovation groups stationed here, and yet it's not a government facility.
Yeah.
The government base is a couple blocks away, right?
So
this is my lease.
So
like you didn't
private people can walk
you didn't
in.
walk through any security to get in here, right?
Right.
And so we come over here, and this is like I'm not exactly sure who's in here today, but it's the Air Force, the DoD, the Navy, and others all have people stationed here, and other DoD groups as well. And they come here because they're able to come and collaborate like they're doing here, and because there are startups here that they can go meet with. And it's hard for them to meet with startups in a government building because they can't even get them in, right? Whereas here, and if they're in a government building, they can only meet with people that they already know they want to meet with.
I know. I've lived
what kind of innovation, you got to be able to meet people you weren't expecting to meet.
It is so stifling. I mean, that was the problem with working with government. It was so stifling. Not to mention the FAR, which is the acquisition rules of the government, which is 2 volumes about that thick. Very pleased to see that this government is actually going to tackle that as a problem, because it's a huge problem.
Yeah. So everybody here is focused on alternate acquisition methods.
Isn't that fantastic?
Right. OTAs,
I mean, it makes
SBIR, other ways to get around, to acquire technology and do that.
But what's amazing here is you have government and private enterprise completely mixed.
Right. And that's really kind of unheard of, and it's really special. So one of the interesting challenges, actually, maybe you can help me, because I was about to go tweet at Elon about this, is I'm a huge fan of the back to office efforts.
Yes.
I don't think, in general, there's always different types of roles, but in general, most people shouldn't be working from home that should be in the office. We have a bunch of the government people that are stationed here, and because of the special nature of it, it's not a government facility. And so we have the Army over here. You can see them. This is a different Army group meeting over here, and this is the Army Applications Lab. And then the DoD over there. The Army, they're like, this is fine. We have no problem with this. Everybody, this is your office. Like, it's where you're supposed to report to, go to work, right? The DoD and the Air Force are like, uh-oh. This is not a government facility.
It's not a secure facility.
No, not secure. It's just not a government. You're supposed to report to a government facility.
I got it. So that's not going back to office.
And technically, we're not meeting the requirements if we come
going
here.
back to office. Oh,
right?
well, we could fix that.
And so I don't think it was the intent, because this is where they're not working from home. They're just like, but everybody's, they're right now they have like kind of an exception, and they don't know who to ask, and they're afraid that they're going to get in trouble for coming to work here when this is where they're supposed to come to work. You know what I mean?
It strikes me that this government would be very open to that.
I believe it's just an unintended consequence. Like this is not what we were talking about.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's funny. You have the different groups, and they, the Army and the Air Force are like Google and Microsoft. Like they do things their own ways. They have their own, right? So they're like, this is fine. We're good, right? But they are like, oh, I'm not sure if this is okay.
That's
right?
weird.
So it's it's a big concern, because
what about Space Force?
We took years to go set all this up. Yeah, Space Force is part of the Air Force right now still, and so Space Works is part of AFWorks.
Gotcha.
And they are here, and if you'll be here for South by Southwest, I know we've got the Space Force director coming in, for a bunch of the activities.
Yeah, I think for the first time I'm going to come to South by Southwest. I'm very fearful of large crowds. I do fine one-on-one. I don't do great with large crowds, but I'm going to...
Okay, we're going to be your best friend through all that. So first of all, this is the only place you need to go. All the cool stuff is here anyway, and we'll connect you to it.
Fantastic.
And this place, the way I think about it is I consider myself an introvert. A lot of people that know me or don't know me that well, they think I'm an extrovert because I have to do all these extroverted things because I'm on stage a lot or I'm doing other stuff. But I think of this like this is like a place built for introverts.
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody's, they're kind of labeled and categorized. You know who you're supposed to talk to and when. There's ways to go meet people if you need to. There's places to go hide and get
absolutely aligned with you.
Kind of different levels. And so we'll take good care of you.
I absolutely understand what you're saying.
All right.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
I'm good till I'm still going. So I mentioned, each of these was a magic trick. And so we took the floors one at a time. And it wasn't, it's very organic, right? Like, to be honest, especially post-COVID, if I were to go just make this from scratch, I might design it a little differently.
Yeah.
Right? And the cool thing is some of my leases are coming up. And it's the best time in the world to be renegotiating your lease.
Absolutely.
And so I'm either going to get an amazing deal to go somewhere else or an amazing deal to stay here.
Yeah.
But and we're going to get to do some more renovations and stuff and things like that, with the budget.
That's very exciting.
So I'm pretty excited about that. But this was the first floor we took, and it's the top floor of the building. You notice when we came in, we have the bottom floor and the top floor. So if you don't look too closely, it looks like we've got the whole thing. Each floor is themed. So the bottom floor is all robots, maybe like the big blue robot downstairs. The 5th floor is Star Wars. The 8th floor is red, white, and blue, and superheroes. That all their conference rooms are named after superheroes. This was the first floor we took, and it's Austin, so it's live music themed because Austin's the live music capital of the world. And almost every one of these posters is from an Austin City Limits TV show taping. So this was the weather station on 2022, Austin City Limits season 48. And so, at some places you want to have the football tickets or basketball tickets, right. and we have that here. But I'm more into the music stuff. So we have the tickets to all the music tapings, and we have a box suite. And so that would be another thing we'll have to get you to sometime. But that's our version of going to the football game.
And when TV was TV, I used to watch Austin City Limits religiously.
Awesome.
Because I was so I started my life by building a recording studio.
Oh, you're one of those chess player musicians
I'm not a musician. That's the kind of tragedy of my life. But I built my own recording studio. We built the mixing desk. We bought an Ampex desk and built the electronics for it ourselves. But this was in Cape Town, South Africa. It was very hard to make a living. Very, very hard to make a living.
Wow. Well, I'm a big fan. Not a great musician, but yeah, lots of great shows. And every one of these posters is from a show I went to. So it's my personal collection. You'll see as we walk around. But this floor, it's like a little microcosm of everything else. We've got everything we need to run Capital Factory. So this is the big room, 150 people in here. But it's just very mixed purpose like the other. And we've got a big screen, our stage, and actually there's a view of the Capitol over there. So it's it's kind of nice. And you'll notice the presidential seal on the floor.
Yeah.
And so our first big guest was President Obama.
Wow.
And we got to give him the tour through here. So that was one of the spots where we stopped.
And this when you just had this floor?
We had just had this floor, just this one
Amazing.
floor. Yeah. Public events going on up here, and then there's a private space, behind it that was a few months. That was the end of last year. That's Secretary Blinken. And again, they just we don't invite them; they come. It's it's like a pretty incredible magic trick we pulled off. And this is, this is a collaboration space. This is where our mentors are meeting doing office hours and meeting with entrepreneurs. There's great views, and so people want to come, obviously just come work.
Amazing views.
And if you're a startup or not, you're competing against Google and Microsoft and Tesla, and they've got nice offices and other things like that. And you can have a great office, right? And give them something great to look at. One of the most fun parts of it. This is you said remember I told you there's windows everywhere. There's one room without windows. If you want to give a push on the planes of passage, appropriately named on the bottom there. This is our one secret meeting room. So it's our skiff.
Oh wow!
And so
we're allowed in?
Yeah, go on. And so, yeah, this is like the deal closing room, like you bring people in to close the deal.
So anyway, once you're in here, can you get out? I mean,
no, there's no getting out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you kind of like bring them in here, show off what you're doing. Like this is part of letting the startups, and entrepreneurs
be big guys,
look bigger than they are.
Yeah,
so you press, this is the way out is you press that little book or window for picture frame.
Brilliant.
And I'm working with architects right now, really kind of a little bit reimagining this floor and what it might look like. As you can see, we've got lots of open desks and things like that, which are great.
Yeah.
But, might be a little, maybe there's a new perspective post-COVID, There's a team in there doing an offsite. And again, big conference room with a beautiful view and not the kind of thing they could get on their own. That room is like, it's the room. Like when the Army Futures Command was coming and the city wanted to close the deal.
Because of the view.
They're like, Josh, can we take them up there?
Yeah.
And we're doing all the meetings up here. And of course, to do that, they got to walk through all the rest of everything, right? And that was a big part of what sold them on coming here.
Question is, does that destroy old Austin,
So far, I think we're still pretty good. The downtown part will keep going up. Austin has a particular thing around view corridors for the Capitol.
I see.
And that they've so far protected. So you can you're basically going south from the Capitol. You can go forever, right?
Yeah.
And always see it. And then there's certain points from the highway or other spots that they keep open.
My wife and I flew here and then we drove to Boca Chica. Our first visit to Boca Chica. We stayed downtown close to the Capitol, I think at a courtyard. And it was depressing, actually.
Yeah.
Couldn't walk to the Starbucks.
Yeah, we went through a bit of a...
It's a busy... Hey. Hi, guys. Busy floor.
Yeah.
So, Josh, on a given day, how many people are in the Capitol factory?
There's no given day.
Yeah.
I mean, but anywhere
Fluctuates.
I'd say probably anywhere from 250 to 2,500.
Wow. Even this is an incredible view.
Yeah, and then the Capitol.
Yeah, there's the Capitol.
And the UT Tower behind it.
Josh, as I was researching you for Maverick Mind, and to be honest, you're quite a legend in this town. I mean, that's the feedback I'm getting. And so I'm trying to do the research, and I look on LinkedIn and scrolling through all the things you've done and the startups and the organizations that you started, I couldn't even form a timeline of it because they all seem to overlap in really strange. So how would you describe your background?
I think I totally can understand why you'd say that. I mean, I think on the one hand, they overlap, and on the other hand, they intertwine and they kind of feed into each other. But I studied computer science during the first .com boom, and I started a company in my dorm room. It was one of the first email marketing companies.
Carnegie Mellon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know there was such a thing as raising money or, anything like that. And so just did what I had to do, built it on a credit card and hired all my friends and fired all my friends and, kind of learned a lot of lessons along the way. I built that business up until, to me, it was like a big business. And really as soon as someone offered to buy it, I sold it, it was like life-changing and amazing. But in hindsight, it was really just at the point where I could have gone and raised a Series A or turned it into what now I would think of as a real business. And so I, built it up to a few $1 million in revenue, sold it for $10, $12 million. And, again, it was life-changing, I owned the whole thing, it was great. But the kind of companies that right now we'd be like, oh, you got a good business. Maybe you can raise money for that, right? Yeah. And so that was, that's kind of what got me started. And, along the way, I've always been a community builder. I've always been, as much as we talked about that I consider myself an introvert, everything happens through people. And being an introvert for me is not about whether you like or don't like people. It's just like, it's more like where you get your energy from and, and how you charge. But I love being around people, and I know that, people are making things happen. And so, I've been so fortunate to have great mentors and to be part of great networks that's really what kind of led to Capital Factory, was being here in Austin when, as it's been just booming and growing for the past 25 years, being part of the Trilogy network that we talked about a little bit earlier, Trilogy software from Joe Lemont, that just connected me to so many incredible people and role models, people to look at who are doing really hard things, who are also great community builders. And then all those things that's fed to Capital Factory. And so the work that I do at the university, the work that I do here, it's all about bringing people together, bringing together entrepreneurs and helping to connect them to the other people that they need.
The interesting thing, Austin's an incredibly interesting place, and I think it's really quite thematic in your life, right? And so you arrived in Austin. What actually brought you to Austin? What was the physical thing? What was the event that made you move to Austin? Because it's so central to the story.
Yeah. So for me, I graduated from college with a computer science degree in 1999, which was an incredible time. That was the peak of the dot-com boom, right? And so everybody was just making crazy job offers.
Right.
It felt like it. My friends were all, going to work at the time it was Microsoft and America Online and, other places like that. And there was this company here in Austin called Trilogy Software that was recruiting heavily from Carnegie Mellon, MIT, and Stanford in particular. And they wanted engineers who were entrepreneurial. And I had a computer science degree and had already started my own company. So I was just right in the bullseye for what they were looking for. And they were right in the bullseye for me. It was really just super fun and exciting, very different. I know I didn't want a desk job. I'd already been working for myself. I wasn't really even looking for a job, but they put me into an incubator, put me into before Y Combinator or anything like that, into their version of a Y Combinator cross survivor. And that was really exciting and really compelling. I always believed, in the surround yourself with other smart people and people that are better than you and people that push you. And that seemed like a great opportunity to do that. And that got me down here to Austin. And Joe Lemont, the founder of Trilogy, he recruited thousands of people like me to come here to Austin. And many of them stayed. Many of them are, here, and they're part of a lot of the top growing companies in town. Still, 20, 30 years later.
So Trilogy and Joe, they were a real, they were essential component of this Austin
major
explosion.
Catalyst. Yeah. You asked earlier what made Austin be Austin.
Yeah.
There's, a number of different things. South by Southwest certainly was a huge catalyst, huge part of it.
Yeah.
Trilogy was definitely a big part of it. There's, if you're an Austinite, and you know the history of Austin and economic development, most people would probably go back to a guy named George Kosmetsky, who was the founder of a national company called Teledyne, but then came here to the University of Texas and really helped to build out the business school, the entrepreneurial programming, it was called MCC. And Semitech, these big semiconductor national initiatives here that really put Austin on the map as a technology center and led to Samsung and IBM and all these other kind of things being here.
Yeah, I drove past the Samsung plant. Is it in Tyler, Texas? Huge plant. It is gigantic. Yeah, it's amazing how Austin has. And so everybody I spoke to as I toured Austin and made some investments in Austin, your name came up constantly. And it was amazing to me because I'd never heard that name on the national stage at all. And here it was, pretty large. And I guess it's all because of Capital Factory or what you've done here in Capital Factory. And so we've toured it, and it's a unique place. There's nothing like it. And so what was in your mind when you initiated this plan? Because you had a lot of startups at the same time. It seems that you've had a lot of things going at the same time. You must have known a lot of people. So what drove this plan? Was it a plan, actually?
Yeah, I mean, it was a vision, less of a plan, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I believe that's really what a lot of what being an entrepreneur is about, right? Is being able to see a destination, a vision of where you want to get to, and being willing to go on the journey to get there, even though you can't see the path, right? Even though you don't know exactly how you're going to get there. There isn't a map. Nobody's done it before. And that's something that a lot of people aren't comfortable doing.
Right.
To me, that's like a big part of the entrepreneurial drive. And so I think Capital Factory was always like that. If you talk to people and friends of mine who are, who've been with me since the beginning, people that were there when we started, I think everybody would say that this is very consistent with the vision, with like what we talked about, what it was supposed to be. Did we describe all of the details? No. Did we know the government and the military would be here? No. We probably would never predict we did anything other than software, but the way that we're doing hardware and biotech and other things it's the same way we do the software. Right? It's not like it doesn't feel like fundamentally different to me. In fact, that was the surprise. It's like, oh wow, we can do that here too.
Yeah, we met earlier with somebody building, underground transport, underground delivery.
Pipe dream.
Pipe dream, yeah, and aptly named. And so that's anything but software. But
they call it hyperlogistics.
Hyperlogistics. But it's interesting that this country has to turn back to building things, not just software, and it's time. So it's a very apt. Yeah, one of the things that strikes me about what you said about the vision is that very often a founder has to be pragmatic about that vision, that the vision can morph and evolve from the original vision if that founder is going to be successful, because sometimes the vision doesn't fit the reality and it has to evolve. Has this evolved somewhat?
Certainly, but not to mince words, but I would say it's less of the vision evolving, not that it doesn't evolve, but the vision often can stay pretty consistent, the mission can stay consistent, but the details evolve,
right?
The how evolves.
Yeah.
And for example, what we wanted to do, what we're doing is what the same, again, it's a simple distinction, but for me, going from software to hardware was a big deal. Robots and rocket ships and but it's working really well. And it's not, and actually it wasn't a big deal. It doesn't feel like a huge departure, but we never would have predicted that. I never could have told you that was going to happen. Yeah. I never could have told you we'd work with the Department of Defense or the military. I would be like, why would they come to us? How could we help them?
And what's interesting about that is that if you go back to 1999, and it's interesting, 1999, I sold the first company that I started in the United States.
Good timing.
Yes, I was extraordinarily lucky.
Because the next year was not a good time.
No, and in fact, what's interesting is that the company I sold it to, I had to help them survive the next year, interestingly enough. But if you cast your mind back to 1999, nobody in the country thought we would get back to building things. It was
over.
It was over. And now we realize that, no, it's not over. This is hardware 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0. I don't know which it is. I mean, I've just been studying the Industrial Revolution. The early industrial, the first industrial, the second industrial, the third, and now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. So robotics, autonomous vehicles and so on and so forth. And this is definitely the fourth revolution. So Capital Factory seems to be so well attuned to that opportunity of that fourth industrial revolution, and it's a revolution led by, in this country by Tesla and Ural, two opposite ends of the coin, and SpaceX, NASA, and so on. So it seems that it's very appropriate that you made these evolutions, right? It's an evolution with the times.
It is, and we've been so fortunate that those things have worked out and lined up. And I can't imagine how that would have happened if we hadn't been working with the government and the military.
Right.
And one of the big lessons that came out of that is it's the military that funds all these things. That's where we get robots and rockets and hard and biotech and really hard things, and that they're the ones that are the most able to move quickly, even though that might sound like an oxymoron to some. But compared to the rest of the government, they move quickly and they can invest in things that matter.
But what about contracting? Because, my experience in trying to work with government was nightmarish. How does that happen these days? How easily does it happen these days?
It's still nightmarish.
Oh, okay.
I think it's probably a little bit better, but it's surprising to me because back when I started doing this 20 years ago, if you were working with the government, that was like a poison pill.
Yes.
You were unfundable.
Yes.
That was like, I'm not going to touch you.
Yes.
Eject that. And that certainly has changed.
Yes.
It's not like that anymore. And partly it's because there are more consistent and easier ways to do business and to get funded. But it's still really difficult.
Right.
It's still confusing and challenging and frustrating and inefficient.
So let's turn back to the main thrust of Capital Factory. How many startups are you really, I don't want to use the word incubating, are you
engaged with?
Engaged with, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, start with like on the cap table would be a good, a good starting point. And that's about 1,000 companies right now.
Whoa, 1,000 companies?
Yeah. Since we've been doing this over the past 15 years and of active companies, I think, on the order of 750.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And obviously, we're not all engaged with them at the same levels. And some of those are, may turn into lifestyle businesses or, might not turn into the big, but they're still, still going. And one of the unique things about our model is, there's a great example of a wonderful company that was very successful called Invoiced. It was an online invoicing company. They found a niche helping a certain type of billing client do their invoicing. They started here in the co-working space. We had an office here for many years. We put in, a little bit of money, but they never really mostly bootstrapped it, never ended up taking venture capital. Sold it for $40 million, a couple of years ago. Like we did great. Everybody did great. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So, we can't, those things work. And at the same time, we've got people like Aptronic who just announced they raised $350 million that we helped lead that round with, you were part of. Yep. And there's more of that, a lot more. Seronic just announced a week later that they raised $600 million and at a $2 billion valuation, and Colossal a few maybe 2 weeks before that announced they raised $400 million at a $10 billion valuation. So that we have both the biggest things in the world happening and really scrappy entrepreneurs who just may not know it yet that they're working on the biggest thing in the world. But so the model lets us engage pretty broadly.
Well, that brings me to the question: what is the model? So we've seen the facilities, we've seen the kindergarten opportunities you've created here. So what is the business model for Capital Factory?
Right. So look, our business model is as an investor, and our model is taking equity in startups and helping them to grow, and then being partners with them, being sharing their success. And we invest through a few different vehicles. And at the later stage, they like the deal we just did with Aptronic, like that looked like it's unusual because it was a really big, awesome deal, but but it looked like a venture deal, and we acted like a venture firm. And that looked like most other venture deals. What's really unusual and unique about what we do is at the early stage and the way that we engage with so many companies. And what we call that is all access. It's the all access fund. And every year, about 100 companies participate in this fund. And unlike every other fund, they don't participate by taking money. They actually participate by giving us $100,000 worth of advisor equity, common stock.
So that's the ante. That's how you.
That's how they start getting involved. And so we've developed a reputation and goodwill and case studies with lots of other entrepreneurs who say they come and they walk around this place and they go, yeah, I want to be part of this. Like, I want to get invited to all your things. I want to be on the all access list. I want to get introduced to Larry when he comes and visits. Right. And so they lean in and they pay it forward with some equity. And then we have.
And what access do they get? Do they get office space? They get shares?
No, it's not about office space. I mean, yes, they get an access card. They can come in here, but it's about introductions.
Right.
It's about people. No, it's about meeting investors, customers, and co-founders.
Right.
And that's what this place is all full of. And so that's what they know they need, right? You know, when you're getting started, it's like what you need is people. You don't know all the people. You need to get in front of people.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're getting all access to. And it's really, it's today. It's like when you came and you walked around and you got to meet with Garrett and with Kurt. And, you know, every day, entrepreneurs here are getting to meet with important people like you, whether they're investors or 4-star generals or press or elected officials or, you know, or other things like that. And they're all people that can help them in some way. And so that's what they're really plugging into. And we also, on the flip side of that, it's like a vintage every year. We have about 100 of them. We have about 100 of our other founders and investors who are like really close in our community. And they all chip in and they invest. It's not targeted at institutional investors, 10, 25 grand each. So we raise a couple $1 million from them. And we use that to provide the services here that you're seeing. Now, it doesn't pay for all of them, but it helps subsidize, you know, pay for parts of those. And so each year there's this pool. Now, 100 companies put in $100,000 worth of equity. That's $10 million worth of equity, right? And we pay a few million dollars for it. So it's kind of like an instant markup. And that's a little vintage. But the result of it is that 100 of the founders here have a piece of 100 of the other founders.
Wow.
And we've been doing this for years. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of founders all investing in hundreds of other founders. And we talk about the rising tide mentality. Like, we're really trying to incentivize a real rising tide mentality.
You got practically a tsunami at this point.
Where everybody feels like we're all in this together. We all want each other to be successful.
Right.
Right. And even though, like, you know, when my friend Brett Hurt, founder of Data.World, who's one of the top CEOs in town, you know, he's obviously, you know, an investor. He's, you know, without, you know, no secret, he's made, I'm sure, tens of millions of dollars. He gets, you know, 1% of 1% of this company, right? Because he participates every year. So, like, you know, that's not going to change his life, right? Like, whatever happens with that, like, you know, like, but still emotionally, like,
yes,
he's like, I'm in that company.
Connected.
I'm in that company. I'm in that. You're like, oh yeah, I'm an investor in that, right? And then of course they get insights into them, such that when they do go raise their next round of capital, they're in a position to invest cash, right, to do more things as well. And that's what happens. It's like it's deal flow for many people as well. But that's really special. I don't think that exists anywhere else. And it works economically. Like, the investors get really good IRR, and it really creates this opportunity that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Seems that there's a real case to be made for an academic study of this model. Has anything of that nature been done? Anybody looked at the results of it?
Not that I know of, no.
Very interesting. I have a friend who may be very interested in doing that. But getting back, so have you had any real, you know, big hits out of here? Any, you know, unicorns?
Yeah. Could, you know, rattle off lots of them. Both
really.
We've been fortunate to have, you know, a good amount of liquidity and exits, and then, you know, we've got lots of great companies that are all, you know, recent unicorns that are excelling and doing really well. One of our first companies we ever invested in was a company at the time called Sparefoot. They're now called Storable. They own the self-storage industry. That was a really great, is a really great company and was one of our early successes. Another one is a company called WP Engine. They're one of the leading WordPress managed hosting providers.
Right.
Really amazing company that's done really well. We helped launch and were the first investors in Multicoin Capital, which is a crypto hedge fund that led the Series A in Solana and Helium, which did exceptionally well.
Right.
We helped start a company called Zen Business, which is like a legal Zoom for business formation for small businesses. They're another great unicorn company here. A company called Aceable, which is it's the way every kid learns driver's ed now.
Oh, really?
And instead of having to watch videos on VHS or sit in a class, you watch videos and play games on your phone.
That's
obviously
amazing, yeah.
right. You know, like, but it's the way everybody learns driver's ed. And they own driver's ed. They were able to, it's like David bought Goliath. They bought driversed.com. And then more recently, companies like Aptronic, humanoid robotics, Seronic, which is autonomous boats for the Navy, and Colossal, which is a de-extinction company bringing back the woolly mammoth and other extinct animals.
Yes. We read about several of those. So that's pretty exciting to see the level of success and the quality of what you have got going here. But Austin's a very important part of that, right? It couldn't really easily happen outside of Austin.
You know, I definitely agree with that. And I don't know how we could have done this anywhere else. And at the same time, about half of the companies that we're working with this year are not from Texas.
And they're
coming to Texas. Like, it's not like it's remote, but they aren't Texas companies. They are coming here a lot. They're plugging into things happening here. Maybe they're thinking about moving here. Maybe they have a team here, but a lot of them are based in San Francisco, in Seattle, in Boston, in Chicago, in LA, in other places, Florida.
So it's actually a magnet for,
and we're not going after them. Like, they're coming here. Like, we don't go. We're not flying anywhere.
Word of mouth, because I've never seen any publication or, I mean, you guys don't even have like a video series. It's amazing. And
well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things we could do better, but it's real. Like, there's real stuff happening here, and that stuff kind of speaks for itself, I think.
Right, but when you say do better, I mean, then
I'm better at like better telling the story, better.
Yeah, well,
making the videos and other things.
I don't know. You seem to have done pretty darn well, and the cost of it the overhead of doing it must be almost zero, or trending to zero.
Not quite. I hope someday. Yeah, like there's still overhead, but I think it's all worth it.
Well, I'm talking about the marketing.
Oh, the marketing. Yeah. Well, it just the fact that like it's organic, it's real. People are, people are doing real important things that then people want to talk about and want to cover.
So did you see, when did the vision arise? When did you actually start seeing this picture and the opportunity?
I mean, I think the vision was there from the beginning. It has, we think of, there's different phases of the evolution. Yeah. And, I think, when we first started, we didn't even have a physical space.
Really?
And so that, opening up the space was the next big step, right? It was always part of the vision, but we didn't, we did it for a few years without it. When the Army and the military came, that took it to a whole new level, right? That we didn't imagine, but fit the vision.
But go back to the evolution of the vision, or to the beginning of the vision. What was without the physical space, what was the vision, and how did it arise?
It was all about connecting entrepreneurs with other entrepreneurs, and in particular, but experienced people who had been in their shoes that can go help them to meet the other people they need to grow their business.
Did that come from what you learned at Trilogy? Did you absorb it from Trilogy, or was it somewhat unique in your own mind? Did the seed get planted? How did the seed get planted?
I don't want to. I mean, I'm sure there was influence by Trilogy, but I just think it was kind of self-evident at the time. Like, that was what was missing, was the connections to people.
Well, you go,
especially here in Austin.
Yeah,
and Austin was smaller and different then.
Yes, I was going to say, you go back to the legend of Silicon Valley, and nothing like this ever arose in Silicon Valley. That would have been a natural place to have done it, except perhaps people are too competitive there. There's a much more competitive spirit. In a way, I guess the university, it's really hard to understand. It's hard to express clearly the difference between Silicon Valley and Austin, but Austin definitely has its own character, and it's a lot more, there's a lot more social goodwill in the Austin model, I think it's fair to say, compared to the the Silicon Valley model, which seems to be a lot more competitive, a lot more confrontational almost, if you like. And so maybe that had something to do with it.
I mean, I think a lot of time, and this is a less mature market. And
yes.
in a really mature market, the investing can become a little bit of a zero-sum game, right? It's me or it's you.
Right.
And in particular, our model, we, again, by not being a lead investor, by, really trying to be really helpful, but, but also, be a secondary investor, it's a collaborative model. Like, we need other investors. We have to work with everybody else because we don't have all the capital. Right.
Yeah, I'm contrasting it in my mind to the Y Combinator model, and there it's competitive. It's tough to get in. They make the bar pretty high, and it just seems to be far less of a welcoming social environment, which you have here, and a welcoming economic environment, which you have here. So you're going to probably have, well, I guess in theory, I'm thinking you may have more losers than they would have. But actually, when I think about it, maybe that's not true. Maybe that's just not true. It'd be interesting to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to compare anything to Y Combinator. Obviously, they're an incredible organization.
Right.
And, doing a lot of things really right. And just like, it's hard to see how you could do anything like this anywhere but Austin. It's hard to imagine how you could do anything like that anywhere but Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
And so,
fair enough.
I love YC. I think they're amazing. We love co-investing in YC. If we see a YC company, like, we think that's a great sign. We want to work with them. I don't think, I think we've got a pretty high bar. Is it as high as YC? I'm probably not. I don't, they definitely, I don't think I could say that, but it's not like just anybody can get in.
Right.
The bar keeps getting higher and higher. And the companies we're getting, are companies like Seronic, that just, we just started working with last year.
Right.
And they, are, part of our, part of All Access. They're, we invested at a $1 billion valuation 6 months ago. Wow. And they just raised $600 million at a $2 billion, or $2 billion, or I guess, no, sorry, we invested at, I think, even less than that. I think it went up 4x. Maybe we invested at a $500 million valuation and it went up to $2 billion in 6 months.
It was very similar to the Aptronic experience.
Yeah. So these are pretty high, pretty competitive deals.
Right. And I met your folks at the Aptronic, in looking at the Aptronic deal. And what's interesting is that I sat with them watching the landing on the moon. So you guys are in the space business as well in a fairly big way.
Yeah. Intuitive Machines and Firefly.
Yeah. It's both extraordinary companies, actually, and kind of competitive, aren't they? Yeah.
They're competing for stick in the moon landing.
Right. So what's in the future? I mean, we've looked at the past. We've looked at where you are today, which is quite incredible. You talked about your lease coming up. And a lot of what I think about as Capital Factory now has to do with the building and the physical space. So
we're placemakers.
Placemakers. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And placemaking is so important in the life of a startup, because in this virtual world, we're getting far beyond virtual. So just give us a brief look at the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited. I feel like this year has already been off to an incredible start with, just the three companies I already mentioned a couple times, because It's hard not to stop thinking about them. Just Colossal, Aptronic, and Seronic, and never mind, I got 1,000 other companies I'm thinking about too, right? And companies like Pipedream that you meant earlier, or AGI. And so, yeah, there's really a lot of things going on that are exciting, and I think we're going to see more of that. I think this year, we're a little bit like, can we just keep our arms around everything, without trying to do anything new, can we just keep our arms around everything that's going on and keep up with Aptronic and keep up with these others? So that's a super exciting time. And I'm also really excited about, that we're, I just feel like we couldn't be in a better time to be reevaluating our, our real estate options. We love where we are. We have an amazing setup right now. And also there's all these, new buildings in town and other things like that. And we're either going to get and there's never been a better time to be a tenant looking for office space. So we're either going to get some much more TI money to take our place we have now and make it even better, or we'll end up at some awesome new building with other new resources too. So fun time to be a tenant.
And I take it in closing that you remain quite a strong proponent of Austin, and you see Austin succeeding into the future.
I do. And, look, it's going to keep changing. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning, it's not going to be the same, succeed for the same reasons
right.
and in the same way. But as we mentioned, somehow Austin's doubled in size every 20 years since the 1800s. Like, it's not from one thing, right? But but somehow we keep it going. And to me, if it was one thing, if there's one thing I'd focus on that I don't think we've lost, even though we've lost some affordability, even though we might have some other challenges, is it's quality of life. That this is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family, and people keep voting with their feet.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Josh. This has been an incredible morning. I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. I want to share one thing with you as a thank you. We have all these military generals and secretaries come, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this tradition, but they have something called a challenge coin. Have you ever seen a challenge coin?
No.
So when you meet a general, they don't carry business cards, and you don't really even get their contact info. But if they want to recognize someone, usually somebody in the military, but every once in a while a civilian as well, every general has a coin. And it's got like something about their command. It looks very official. It'll usually have their name on it and say something like presented for excellence or something like that. And just due to the nature of us being the place that gets to receive all the generals and others, I've been very fortunate. I've received quite a few of these coins. And so I have a great collection. And at one point, Craig Cummings, one of my good friends and military advisors, he said, Josh, you should make a Capital Factory coin. So when they give you a coin, you can turn around and like slip them a coin back and they'll think it's really cool. And I was like, is that okay? Like, I don't want to, like, am I allowed to do that? Like, it's not just, oh yeah, it's totally okay. And so we have a Capital Factory coin, and it's mostly for our military friends, but I'd love to give you one too. It's got our Capital Factory logo on one side, and then very appropriately, the Texas flag on the moon on the other side. And so you present it in a handshake.
Thank you so much.
Memento to remember.
Treasure this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. And thank you for your time. I know it's extremely valuable, but you certainly are a maverick mind, and I'm so happy to have you on the program.
Awesome. And if just, I'm really easy to find. If anybody wants to reach out, or if you're ever in Austin or you want to send somebody in Austin our way, my email, which I'll check, is josh@quityourjob.com.
Quityourjob.com. Fantastic. Thank you,
Alrighty.
Josh.